Welcome to this deep dive explainer overview. Today we're going to explore a massive high-stakes geopolitical trade war, but we're going to do it by looking at, well, garbage. We're zooming from the macro level of US-Canada tariff disputes all the way down into the micro-level reality of cross-border waste logistics. It's absolutely wild how these sweeping international policies actually hit the pavement in surprising everyday ways.
To really grasp the stakes here, you just have to look at the rhetoric dominating the current year-to-date news reporting. On one side, you have the Trump administration pushing a 25% near-universal tariff on Canadian goods. And then, on the flip side, Ontario Premier Doug Ford firing back, calling it unjustified, unfair, and frankly illegal. Now, we're not here to take political sides at all. We just want to observe this stark contrast in geopolitical rhetoric, because it immediately sets the stage for the intense trade tension driving this whole situation and creating ripples in industries you'd literally never expect.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for this explainer. First up, the US-Canada tariff war. Second, the Ontario-Michigan waste corridor. Third, the USMCA tax-free commodity loophole. Fourth, strict border compliance realities. Fifth, the 905 Wood digital refinery workflow. And finally, failure risks and rewards.
All right, Section 1, the US-Canada tariff war.
Notice just how fast this whole thing escalated. In a matter of months, we went from initial threats in November 2024 right into February 2025, where the Trump-Washington USMCA tariffs took the form of 25% executive orders. The blowback? Immediate. By March, Ontario's Doug Ford retaliated with an energy surcharge. And sure, some USMCA relief temporarily calmed things down, but the pressure just kept building. Fast forward to February 2026, and Washington pivoted to Section 122 global tariffs after a Supreme Court ruling. This rapid-fire trade war eventually culminates in June 2026, shining a massive investigative spotlight on one specific vulnerability, the waste loophole exposure. Every single move here reshapes the economic landscape in real time.
Moving right along to Section 2, highlighting the Ontario-Michigan waste corridor.
3.46 million tons. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the staggering volume of municipal solid waste, MSW disposal, shipped across the border to U.S.-Michigan landfills from Ontario, Canada annually. Picture thousands upon thousands of heavy trucks just packed with refuse, lined up on the highway, caught smack in the middle of a trade war. We're talking about a massive, continuous physical supply chain of garbage moving straight through a highly contested international border checkpoint. You know, when we talk global trade, we usually think cars or steel, right? But the logistics of moving millions of tons of trash, that is a colossal industry all its own, and it's incredibly vulnerable to tariff shocks.
And Ontario isn't just dropping off a few bags here and there. It turns out Michigan imports so much that Ontario accounts for 14.35% of all waste disposed of in Michigan landfills. The other 85.65% is from other sources, sure, but that nearly 15% chunk from Canada? That's a deeply entrenched structural dependency. Michigan absolutely relies on the revenue, and Ontario relies on the space. This isn't a temporary fix, it's a permanent fixture of regional logistics that is now totally caught in the crossfire of international tariffs. If this corridor shuts down, the backup of waste and the financial fallout would be, well, immediate and severe.
Section 3, the USMCA tax-free commodity loophole.
So you might be wondering, how on earth does this massive volume of trash keep moving when practically everything else is getting slapped with heavy taxes? Well, the secret lies in a very specific regulatory definition. Under the USMCA, waste is technically classified as a tax-free commodity. That means it's totally exempt from these sweeping tariffs. But, and this is a huge but, there is a massive catch. It's only exempt if proper documentation proves its origin and compliance. Specifically, they need a verifiable certificate of origin. Suddenly, rigorous, error-free documentation is the absolute most critical part of this entire physical supply chain. Without that exact paperwork proving it's a designated commodity, it's just taxable garbage facing a brutal 25% penalty.
Section 4, strict border compliance realities.
Now, these haulers face a really brutal dual reality the second they hit that border. On the federal side, Border Customs demands a verifiable certificate of origin along with a mandatory 5-year digital record retention policy. Let's be real, paper records just completely fail to meet modern compliance standards here. They're way too slow to process, they get lost in transit, and they're highly susceptible to forgery.
But wait, it gets harder. On the provincial level, strict Ontario transportation insurance requirements mandate a 100% financial guarantee under Article 9 for any damages during transit. So haulers are completely squeezed. Federal customs agents are scrutinizing their origin proof on one side, and provincial regulators are demanding total financial assurance on the other. Literally, a single missing document can bring an entire fleet to a grinding halt.
And looking at the official Auditor General definitions, it's crystal clear that accurate classification isn't just some federal customs issue. It is a strict provincial mandate in Ontario. The province requires verifiable audits and diversion tracking. You can't just toss everything into a giant bin and call it a day. The waste has to be properly sorted, categorized, and tracked to make sure recyclable materials are diverted away from landfills before the truck even hits the highway. This level of granular tracking for industrial, commercial, and institutional waste, it requires a monumental effort in record keeping. If a hauler misclassifies a load, they're looking at severe provincial penalties long before they even see the U.S. border.
Which brings us to Section 5, the 905 Wood Digital Refinery Workflow. So, how do they survive this compliance nightmare? Well, it's solved chronologically by the 905 Wood Digital Refinery Workflow. It kicks off right at the bin with Step 1, Edge AI classification, which instantly categorizes the materials. Step 2 is real-time verification, making sure every byte of data perfectly matches regulatory standards. Step 3 automatically generates that make-or-break certificate of origin. And finally, Step 4 ties the whole shebang together. The system gives you a seamless digital refinery application workflow UI/UX output PDF documentation. In plain English, it creates a perfectly formatted, totally unalterable digital pass. It's literally the cryptographic key that opens the border gate, completely replacing those slow, error-prone paper manifests from the past.
But, this system goes way beyond just getting a truck across the border. It actively manages the money through cryptographic chain of custody tracking. What does that actually mean for the folks on the ground? It means dodging massive financial penalties. For instance, using this verification, haulers can lock in a $5 per ton rate for clean wood instead of getting slammed with a brutal $60 mixed waste penalty under the Circle levy. It generates audit-ready diversion passes, and this is huge. It ensures companies retain the value of their carbon dividends, or CORCs. These are tradable certificates for carbon removal. By proving they're handling waste right, they keep these lucrative financial assets. The software seamlessly bridges that insanely complex cross-border regulatory reporting directly with real-world financial billing.
Section 6. Failure risks and rewards. When you're a hauling business navigating this corridor, the failure risks and rewards are absolutely stark. On the risk side, failing this digital compliance is crippling. We're talking denied entry, massive back duty assessments, and getting hit with the full 25% unexempted tariffs. For a logistics company running on razor-thin margins, a single rejected load can literally ruin the business overnight. But the rewards for adopting compliance technology are just immense. You got protected duty-free margins, secured USMCA commodity status, and totally seamless compliance. It is literally the difference between thriving in a high-stakes trade environment and finding yourself completely locked out of the market.
So, as sweeping environmental policies and fierce international trade wars continue to collide head-on, it leaves us with one critical question. Will Edge AI and real-time digital verification become the absolute mandatory standard for surviving North American supply chains? Because the days of crossing the border with a paper manifest, those are definitively over. Trade wars aren't just fought in fancy boardrooms anymore. They're fought right at way stations and border checkpoints, and winning relies entirely on the speed of digital compliance. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep this micro-level reality in the back of your mind the next time you see headlines about global tariffs, because the real truth of international trade, it's always found in the logistics.